Let's move on, though, into our next topic, Brandon. And actually, we are going from, I believe, we're going from the Detroit Pistons to a former Detroit Piston when they went on one of their, also a former Bull, by the way, but a former Detroit Piston when they were making their championship runs in the early to mid to late 2000s. And here's what Rip Hamilton had to say on CBS Sports. So he was asked, when it comes to the NBA draft, has anyone jumped out to you, surprised you, someone you think we need to keep an eye on? And here's what his response was. Grayson Allen. They had a workout in LA and a lot of NBA execs. They had about 100 of them there. What I'm hearing from some of my guys that are connected to a lot of teams is that this guy who really impressed them, he plays with the heart that you need to play with. He has that pit bull mentality. They have this drill where you have to shoot 25 threes, and he knocked down 20 out of 25. Everyone knows how athletic he is. He's off the charts with the athletic ability. Everyone projected him to go anywhere from 20 to 30. This is a guy that could sneak into the top 15 to 20. He's impressed a lot of scouts. He's impressed me just by watching some of his tape. I think he's a guy that can really move up in the NBA draft. End quote. Here's what I'm going to ask you, Brandon. How high will Grayson Allen be drafted?
Well, first of all, I just want to let you know that the Oakland Athletics selected Kyler Murray.
Did they?
They did.
Nice.
So
we were talking about that last week.
We were. So
I wouldn't want to play for Oakland. I'll stay with Texas A&M.
So how?
Because I don't think he'll go. I don't think he'll get top 15.
Top 15 is a real.
That means he's a lottery pick.
Top 15 is a real stretch with Grayson Allen. I think that he's still between 20 and 30. And the reason that I think he's between 20 and 30 is because, Ricky, we've seen Grayson Allen. We saw Grayson Allen this past year. Yes, live in person.
He played really well.
We could reach out and touch him. We couldn't, but
reach out and touch me.
But he played extremely well. Like you said, he played extremely well. And Grayson Allen has these stretches where he just turns it on and he lights it up. And he lit it up that night. And he was so good. And they needed him to be so good because that was the night that Marvin Bagley took a finger to the eye and left at the very beginning of the first half. Like maybe a couple minutes in. So they needed Grayson Allen. He's an energy guy. He is absolutely a passionate energy guy. But he will disappear sometimes. There are games where Grayson Allen, you're not even sure if he was on the floor for 20 minutes. And also, we talk about the guys like the Trae Youngs. We talk about the guys like the Colin Sextons. What we can certainly say about Grayson Allen is he's not a true point guard. And has Grayson Allen already capped off what he's going to be? And why I brought up the other two is because we don't believe that they're, rightfully so, anywhere near what they're going to end up being 5 years down the road. Grayson Allen, what you see right now may be what you get.
And that's one thing where I'm looking at the top 15 of the NBA draft. I don't see a single team that I would feel comfortable taking him in the top 15, where I feel like top 10 for sure, no way he goes in the top 10. Like Charlotte, I wouldn't take him there. The Clippers, I wouldn't take him at either of their picks. Denver, I wouldn't take him at 14. Then I kind of go down 15 through 20. That's where I feel like if he's going to rise, that's the highest he'll go. But someone's going to have to take a stab on him. In my mind, right now, I think either two things will happen for Grayson Allen. Right now, I came up with my first draft of our mock draft that we're going to have on the fast break. And I'll let you know about this now because it's probably going to change by Friday. But right now, I have Grayson Allen in the second round. I actually have it to where there's a certain team that actually trades into the second round, like gives up cash or a future second just to grab him in the second round. Because I feel like if he's in the second round, a team will do that. A team with championship pedigree will say, we need this kid. Or a young team that's like, we need this kid. Let's give away a future second, or do what the Bulls and Warriors did with Jordan Bell, where the whatever team's draft pick it is, hey, we'll just give you cash. Give us that pick, and we'll take Grayson Allen. But if he's going to go in the first round, I have three teams back to back to back where I could see him going. 26 to Philly, 27 to Boston, 28 to Golden State. And originally, I had him slotted in at Golden State because that to me would be a dream for him. It's a team that loves to shoot the three. He gets to go to the best thing about the Warriors is their environment. Festa Ezeli today was on Colin Cowherd, and when he was talking about his time with the Warriors, he said the best part about it is he's like, that locker room, it's just fun to play basketball. And they just look like they're having fun. And like it makes you feel like I'm having fun out there. Which part of it is when you're winning, you're having fun. But I mean, that's what life is. I feel like he'd be able to fit in at Golden State. He'd be a better younger version of Nick Young. That's what I feel like. Because he can shoot the three. He'd be a two guard who has some point guard tendencies. But the thing I like him for either one of those three, mainly Boston or Golden State, yeah, he's had his problems in the past, tripping players. With the right coach, Brad Stevens, Steve Kerr, or Brett Brown maybe, but more Brad Stevens, Steve Kerr, he can be coached. And also, as a freshman, he has championship experience. Yeah, it's only the NCAA championship, but he has that experience to where, hey, I can bring this kid in. He's not a freshman, and he has that pedigree. I can bring him in and not have to worry about him fading away in the playoffs. He can help us and maybe give us some quality minutes off the bench with my already playoff-ready team.
So, Ricky, here's the thing that worries me with Grayson Allen, too. His 15-16 season at Duke was outstanding. Mm-hmm. He ended it, he averaged 21.6 points per game. He was just lighting it up. He was just all over the place in a good way. The 2 years after that, he dropped down to, I think, 15 and 14 or 14 and 15 points per game. Huge drop-off. Less games started. He started 10 less games the next year, and I believe maybe played in one less game the next year.
You said 2015-16?
15-16 was his best season.
Okay.
16-17, big drop-off. Mm-hmm. And then 17-18, I think he maybe came back just a little bit. But he went down significantly from where he was in 15-16. A huge drop-off. Again, I know that he did not start the same amount of games the next year in 16-17, but, I mean, a complete huge drop-off in production. That's not comforting.
I mean, it's not comforting when you say that, but here's the thing I think of, and I'm doing the research right now to see if it fits. So let's go back to that good year you said, 15-16. And if I look at that Duke roster, they had Luke Kennard, who was a freshman. I love saying it that way, by the way. They had Brandon Ingram, who was a freshman. They had Marshall Plumlee was one of their captains. But really, like when I look at that team, Luke Kennard, Brandon Ingram, Grayson Allen. That was his sophomore year after he won the national championship the year before. Brandon Ingram was probably the number one guy on that team. Grayson Allen was not covered up. He could be either 2 or 3 on that team. Then I go to 2016-2017. That roster consisted of Luke Kennard was there still. Brandon Ingram was in the NBA. But it's basically Harry Giles didn't play much, but he was on that team. Jason Tatum was a freshman on that team. Yet again, J-Tay the main guy. Luke Kennard, bigger role. Grayson Allen falls a little bit. And then this year, this Duke team was stacked. This Duke team, Gary Trent, Trayvon Duval, Marvin Bagley, Wendell Carter. Too many cooks. Too many cooks in the kitchen. It's
think that's it?
I think that's it. I know. Maybe not the 16-17, but definitely this year was Marvin Bagley and Wendell Carter were the 1-2 on that team, the best players on that team. That's why they're going to be drafted in the lottery, maybe both of them in the top 10, depending on if Wendell falls or not. But most people are trending him upward. And then you also had Gary Trent and Trayvon Duval, who were really good for that team. And Coach K had to find a way to make them all work. That's the only reason I can think, because Grayson Allen, to me, when I watched him play this season, and when we watched him live, it wasn't like whoa, this dude lost a step from those years. It was just there were so many good players, and his stats went down a little bit because they were going to someone else. That's what I would think it is.
Well, when I saw him play in that game, and that game was against Michigan State, I thought, and I think, and Dave was with us as well. I mean, I think we could have probably all pegged him, and maybe already did peg him for like Player of the Year.
But think about it.
Player of the Year right here.
Here's the thing to think about also. Marvin Bagley was injured, like you said. He got injured very early in that game after getting poked in the eye. So that also helped. Not having Bagley out there, all right, that's one less player that is going to take points away from anybody on the court. But two, even if Marvin Bagley played significant minutes in that game, I believe that was game 1 of the year for Duke, or game 2 of the year. I think it was game 1 for Duke. So for me, Marvin Bagley wasn't the player that he was towards the end of the year. Wendell Carter wasn't the player he was at the end of the year. As this team started to mature over the year or over the season, Grayson Allen took more of a backseat role. Not saying that's bad, but he let like the Bagley, Wendell Carter take the front, and I'm just going to help the team any way I can.
But I guess my whole thing is that I don't need him to go out there and score 30 a game.
No, you don't.
And he's not going to, but when you drop off 6 or 7 points in production, that's huge. And you don't want to be that guy that is really showing up for some games and then just disappears, which is what he did at times down the stretch. And yes, Duke was fortunate that they had the Bagleys, the Carters, to be able to pick up the production and keep Duke going and in those games. But as good as Grayson is with certain things, he's got the size, 6'4", 6'5", he's got the size. Size is there, no problem with that. He's a really good spot-up 3-ball shooter. He's also really good without the ball. I think that he's got some really, really good tools in that sense. He's a poor defender when it comes down to it, and he needs to get better there. But he also cannot be the guy who just goes. He cannot be the guy who's on the floor for 22 minutes and has 7 points. And I'm not saying that's going to be him by any stretch, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to get that reputation of you could be on the floor for 25 minutes and have 25 points, or you could be on the floor for 25 minutes and have 10.
The only thing that bugs me from his stats, and I'm only looking at 2015 to 2015, 2016, and then this past year. I'm omitting the 15-17 because I'm looking from where you started to where you are now. The points per game doesn't bug me because 15 points per game, if you're giving that to me, I'm not saying he's going to do that off the bench, but even if you're giving me 13 off the bench as a Warrior Celtic team, I'm good with that.
No, I'm
good with that.
That's good. But he's doing that as a starter and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the role is different. But I'm not saying that points is everything. That's certainly not it. But for a guy like Grayson Allen, where guess what? Points are going to be mostly everything when you're a 3-ball shooter.
Well, that's the thing that worries me. So looking through it, I'll go right through. The points don't bother me at 15.5, but like you said, that's at starter minutes. Does that go down if he's not at starter minutes, also against greater competition at the next level? I mean, it's not great that your assist to steal it's almost 1-to-1, but it's favoring you're turning the ball over like almost half a time more than you're stealing the ball. The thing I like is that he went up by almost an assist a game. I would almost like that to go up a little bit more, but I get you're going to be more of my 2-guard that's a spot-up shooter, maybe with some point guard tendencies if I need you to handle the ball in any situation. I mean, the free throw shooting is up. The overall field goal percentage is down, but mainly that's because the 2 percentage is around the same. The thing that worries me is the 3-point percentage, because 2015, 2016, he's averaging 6 attempts per game. He's nailing 41, almost 42%. That's great. That's what I want to see. But then it's like, all right, I'm giving you 1, almost 2 more attempts a game, and you're dropping to 37, which I think is more towards league average. I know we looked at that last week, but that's what worries me the most. With the more 3-point attempts I give you, your percentage drops from almost 42 to 37 from beyond the arc. And that would be my concern from a guy who, yeah, he hit 20 of 25 threes in a gym with no one guarding him. But also, I believe Jamal Murray hit like 98 of 100 threes for Boston in a gym with no one guarding him. And that's nothing against Jamal Murray, but how's he been doing for the Nuggets? Are the Nuggets a playoff team? That one drill doesn't say everything about a player at the next level.
And a guy that Grayson Allen has been compared to is Eric Gordon from the Houston Rockets. And
Great six man.
And I was just going to say, and Eric Gordon this year in 69 games, 18 points, about 2 assists, shooting almost 36% from 3. I could take that. I could take that. If he could do that, if Grayson Allen could do that at the next level, I'd be happy with that. But my biggest concern when it comes down to Grayson Allen is the tools are there, but it's the consistency. It is the consistency to carry that from game to game. If you are the sixth man, can you carry that energy, which he most likely could because he's, like I said at the beginning of this segment, he's an energy and passion guy. He's exactly what you'd want in the type of sixth man coming off the bench. But can you carry that in terms of your production that you give your team off the bench?
And that's why for me, the two teams that the three that I'm going to go back to the three that I mentioned earlier, the 76ers, the Boston Celtics, and the Golden State Warriors, because I think either of those three teams, 26 through 28, that's really where I feel like as high as Grayson Allen will go. And those will actually be, to me, the best three situations for him because, I mean, I'll start from worst to best. The worst situation out of the three, I would say, is the Philadelphia 76ers because, yeah, he'll get to play with guys like Joel Embiid, who's also an energy guy. He'll get to play with Ben Simmons, who's one of the up-and-coming players, and I know people are going to get mad I call him up-and-coming, but he's most likely going to be one of the best players in the NBA once the LeBrons, the KDs are all said and done. And then you have also Markelle Fultz if he ever decides to actually play basketball like he did at the end of the year, not like he did at the beginning of the year. But the only reason why I would put them in is for Grayson Allen, and I don't want to knock Brett Brown, but I kind of do. He's not the same kind of coach as Steve Kerr or Brad Stevens. And we won't find this out until after the draft. Now, if the 76ers got LeBron James, then it would be a beautiful situation for Grayson Allen because he can just be coached by LeBron James. And kind of LeBron can, I'm not saying literally take him under the wing, but he can learn from the best player in the NBA. Then there's Boston. That would be my number 2. Great coach who's going to coach him up, and he works well with young players. He doesn't have to be anything special right off the bat. They have Marcus Smart if they bring him back because he's an RFA this year. They have Terry Rozier, who is still under contract for one more year, another young player. But at shooting guard, it would be him and Gordon Hayward. So, yeah, they have Marcus Smart and Terry Rozier to kind of put in there, depending on when Kyrie's back, how they do that. But they can fit him into that 2 guard, and he'll just be on the depth chart, the only other shooting guard than Gordon Hayward. Then there's my best spot, and that would be Golden State. Not only do you get Steve Kerr, not only do you get guys like KD, Klay Thompson, Steve Curry. Like I said before, Steph Curry. Why did I say Steve Curry?
Steve Curry.
Steph Curry.
Okay.
His younger brother, younger than his other brother. That's Steve Curry. Seth, Steve, and Steph. Those are the 3 Curry. No one talks about Steve Curry enough. No one does. It's kind of like Cooper Manning. No one talks about Coop. No one talks about Stephen Curry enough, but they're there. Stephen Curry, though, you have those 3 guys, also Draymond Green, so you don't have to be the main starter, but I just feel like he would be a better version of Nick Young. I know Nick Young has been not Swaggy P, but Uncle P this year, but Swaggy P's coming off a contract. Just replace Nick Young with a younger version in Grayson Allen, and basically he could then be that I kind of want to say like a some sort of a six man, but not really the six man because Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston are still on that team. But if they need like, oh, Klay Thompson goes down or Klay Thompson needs a rest, let me throw Grayson Allen out there, much like they're doing with Nick Young right now. That's what I think would be his best option and where I hope he gets drafted if he goes in the first round.
I think to go back to the original question again, though, do you think that I could see him at 15, go all the way up to 15,
No.
be a lottery pick? No, there's too many questions.
No.
There's too many question marks around him for him to be that high to go 15.
Well, it's not just that. To me, it's not really questions. It's just if I'm selecting someone.
They're questions for me.
No. There are questions. I'm not doubting that. But for me, it's not if there's questions about them. To me, if I am drafting you in the lottery, 99.9% of the time, if I'm drafting you in the lottery, I'm expecting you to start.
Well, yeah.
And I don't want Grayson Allen to be my starting two guard. And that's what I'm saying. I feel like Grayson Allen, especially in his rookie year, would be more fit to a six-man bench role than a starting two guard right out of the gate.
But that's also why I think that the comment is kind of crazy. Because then
Rip Hamilton?
Yeah, because you're then making the assumption that Grayson Allen's going to be an NBA starter, which I don't think anybody, probably nobody, ever thought that he was going to be an NBA starter from the get-go.
And it could be, to be honest, and I'll go back to the original point where he says the fact that he's impressing a lot of scouts and a lot of execs, you got to separate just because you impress an NBA exec doesn't mean they're going to say, boom, let's take him at 13. Like, yeah, sometimes that happens, but it might be the case of, hey, you know what? Maybe he's fallen to, and I'm not going to say fallen because he's not supposed to go in the top 15 for me, but let's say he goes to like 23 in Indiana and some team goes, hey, let's trade up for him. I could see that happening. To where between 15 and 20 or 15 and 25, if a team that's back or a team that's not in the first round goes, hey, I like him, let me trade up for him, I just don't see that happening. I just see him going straight through. He'll go 26 through 28. Those will be the teams I look at. And then if not, he's a second-round talent to me. Mm-hmm. And even if he's in the second round, I don't think he's going to be one of those second-rounders that's like, well, we drafted him, he's out of the league in a couple years. He might be one of those second-rounders where we look at it and it's like, wow, like a Draymond Green-esque in the sense of we look at him on a team and go, man, he's not a guy that's going to be your Steph Curry's, your Klay Thompson's, your Kevin Durant's, but he's a really good role player for that team off of the bench, though, where Draymond's a starter. Grayson would be off the bench in a six-man role. That's what I would think would be his cap in the NBA.
I agree with you. I don't really see Grayson Allen unless it was a situation like where with the Chicago Bulls and you have certain
at
guys.
22?
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about a spot that you're at. I'm talking about a situation like the Bulls this past year. Guys who were on that team were starting that you would never see them starting for other NBA teams. It's because the Bulls are in such disarray all over the place that you had to start. That's the only type of situation that I would see Grayson Allen starting. Not because he's not talented, but because that's just not necessarily going to be the role that he's going to be asked to play when it comes to the NBA.
Like, let me throw out a name for you. Like, oh, here's a good one because Bulls fans were talking about giving him a contract. Like Sean Kilpatrick. Remember when we got him and he played 9 games really well, won us some games we probably should have lost, and that's why I'm not getting on that. This is the Primetime Podcast, not the Bulls Podcast. But any final thoughts on Grayson Allen before I blow a gasket about my Bulls?
No, I'm good.
This is where you guys come in. Let us know what you think about Grayson Allen. How high do you think he'll be drafted? What do you think about Rip Hamilton's comments about Grayson Allen? Where do you think he'll go? What teams would you like to see him on? Because he's kind of a guy with what range I think he'll be in. We don't necessarily have to talk where he'll go. It's more of what team you'll want to see him on and where he fits in best for you. So let us know all that down below in the comment section.